Christmas morning, 1986. You're sitting cross-legged on the living room carpet in your pajamas, ripping through wrapping paper so fast your mom can't keep track of which gift came from who. And there it is. The box you'd been staring at in the Sears catalog since September. You didn't care who made it. You didn't read the company name printed on the side of the box. You just wanted what was inside. But that company, the one whose name you never noticed, doesn't exist anymore. And it wasn't alone. Dozens of American toy companies that once filled every shelf in every store across this country simply vanished. Some collapsed overnight. Some were swallowed whole by bigger competitors. Some just quietly stopped showing up. So hit subscribe, because here are 25 massive American toy companies that just disappeared without warning. Number 25. American Character Doll Company. In the 1950s, this was one of the biggest doll makers in the United States. Their Tiny Tears doll, which actually cried real tears when you squeezed her belly, sold millions of units year after year. Little girls carried them everywhere, changed their tiny outfits, fed them with miniature bottles. American Character was a fixture at every toy counter in America for over half a century. But by the mid-1960s, Mattel's Barbie was eating the doll market alive. American Character tried to compete, released newer dolls, spent heavily on television advertising. None of it worked. In 1968, the company shut its doors for good. No farewell, no final press release. A doll company that had been in business since 1919 was simply gone, and most of the kids who had loved their dolls never even knew it happened. Number 24. Remco Industries. Remco built some of the wildest toys of the 1960s. Battery-operated tanks, working periscopes, walkie-talkies that actually transmitted across the street. For a full decade, Remco was the company that made toys feel like real military technology. Their catalog read like a miniature Department of Defense wish list. But Remco expanded too fast. They jumped into the doll market, tried to take on Mattel and Hasbro at the same time, and burned through cash faster than they could bring it in. By the early 1970s, the company was hemorrhaging money. In 1974, Remco filed for bankruptcy and shut down completely. The factory went quiet. The brand name bounced around for years afterward, slapped onto cheap imports that had nothing to do with the original company. The Remco that made those incredible battery-powered tanks was gone forever. Number 23. Topper Toys. This company came out of nowhere in the early 1960s with a toy called the Johnny Lightning car. Those little die-cast racers were faster than Hot Wheels on a straight track, and every kid on the block knew it. You'd set up the orange plastic track in the basement, line up 2 cars at the starting gate, and the Johnny Lightning car would blow past the Hot Wheels by a full length every single time. Topper threw everything they had into competing with Mattel. Television commercials during Saturday morning cartoons, sponsored racing events, aggressive pushes into department stores. For a few years, it worked. Johnny Lightning was a genuine threat to Hot Wheels' dominance, but Topper overextended. They borrowed heavily, expanded their product line too fast, and when sales didn't keep pace with the spending, the whole thing fell apart. Topper filed for bankruptcy in 1972 and disappeared completely. Number 22. Aurora Plastics Corporation. If you built model kits as a kid, you knew Aurora. They made the monster model kits that every boy in America wanted: Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy. You'd sit at the kitchen table with a tube of glue, a tiny paintbrush, and a sheet of decals, carefully snapping pieces off the plastic tree and cementing Frankenstein's monster together one limb at a time. The whole kitchen smelled like model cement for hours afterward. Aurora dominated the plastic model business through the 1960s, but they made a critical mistake. In the early 1970s, they released a series of monster models that parents and retailers considered too violent and too graphic. Stores pulled them from shelves. The controversy damaged the brand badly, and Aurora never recovered. They filed for bankruptcy in 1977, taken down partly by the very monsters that had made them famous. Number 21. Nylint Corporation. Nylint made metal trucks, real metal, heavy enough that if you dropped one on your foot, you'd feel it for a week. Their dump trucks, fire engines, and construction vehicles were pressed from actual steel, not flimsy plastic. You could leave a Nylint truck in the yard all summer, drive it through mud puddles, crash it into the curb 100 times, and it would still be in one piece by September. The company was based in Rockford, Illinois, and they'd been making steel toys since the 1940s. For decades, they were the standard. But cheaper plastic toys from overseas started undercutting them badly in the 1990s. Parents stopped paying a premium for steel when a plastic truck cost a third of the price. Nylint filed for bankruptcy in 2001 and closed for good. Number 20. Gabriel Industries. Gabriel made some of the most recognizable toys and games of the 1970s. They produced the Erector set, one of the original American construction toys, along with color forms, those vinyl shapes you'd press onto a glossy scene board and peel off again and again until the board got sticky and the pieces stopped clinging properly. Gabriel also made Lone Ranger action figures and a string of board games that showed up in closets all over the country. The company had a solid product line and a long history. But in the early 1980s, the toy industry started consolidating fast. The big players were getting bigger, and mid-sized companies like Gabriel couldn't compete on shelf space or advertising budgets. Hasbro acquired Gabriel in 1984. The products were absorbed, the brand name retired, and Gabriel just stopped existing. No dramatic collapse. Hasbro simply folded them in and moved on. Number 19. Buddy L. This was one of the oldest toy companies in America. They'd been making toy trucks since 1921, and for most of the 20th century, a Buddy L truck was a standard Christmas present for any kid who liked things with wheels. Their pressed steel trucks were enormous by today's standards, big enough for a toddler to actually sit on. You'd see them in every Sears and JCPenney catalog, right next to the bicycles and the tricycles. By the 1970s and 1980s, Buddy L had shifted to smaller die-cast vehicles and plastic construction toys, trying to keep up with changing tastes. But the company changed hands multiple times throughout the 1990s, each new owner stripping away a little more of what had made the brand special. Quality dropped. The name started showing up on cheaply made imports that had nothing in common with the originals. By the early 2000s, Buddy L was effectively dead. A company that had been putting trucks under Christmas trees for 80 years was gone. Number 18. Marx Toys. At its peak in the 1950s, Louis Marx & Company was the single largest toy manufacturer on the planet. Not just in America, on the planet. They made everything. Toy soldiers, play sets, tin lithograph toys, wind-up cars, cap guns, train sets, action figures. If you walked into a five and dime store anywhere in the United States between 1930 and 1970, half the toy aisle was probably Marx. Their play sets were legendary. The Ford Apache set came with dozens of tiny cowboys and cavalrymen, a full stockade fence, horses, a flagpole, and a tin headquarters building. You'd spread the whole thing across the living room floor and spend an entire Saturday afternoon staging battles. Marx was different from other toy companies because they kept prices low. Louis Marx himself was famous for saying he wanted to give the most toy for the least money. And it worked. While other companies priced toys for wealthy families, Marx made toys that working-class parents could actually afford. A Marx playset cost a few dollars when competitors were charging 10 or 15 for something half the size. But the 1970s hit Marx hard. Louis Marx sold the company to Quaker Oats in 1972, and Quaker had no idea how to run a toy business. They stumbled through a few years, then sold Marx again. The new owners couldn't reverse the slide either. Factories closed one by one. The workers in Glendale, West Virginia, and Erie, Pennsylvania, who had built those playsets for decades, lost their jobs. By 1980, Marx was finished. The largest toy company in the history of the world didn't go out with a press conference or a farewell announcement. The factories just locked their doors, and that was it. If you still have a Marx playset somewhere in your attic, hold on to it. They're not making any more. Number 17. Imperial Toy Corporation. You might not recognize the name, but you definitely owned their products. Imperial was the company behind most of those cheap rubber balls, water guns, bubble wands, and party favors that filled the bins at every drugstore and grocery checkout in America. They were the kings of the impulse buy toy. That rubber ball you grabbed off the rack while your mom was in the checkout line? Probably Imperial. That water gun you lost in the neighbor's yard after one afternoon? Also Imperial. The company operated out of Los Angeles for decades, quietly supplying the low-cost end of the American toy market without any fanfare at all. But even the king of the dollar toy couldn't survive forever. Imperial filed for bankruptcy in 2018 and shut down operations. Most people never even knew the company had a name. Number 16. Ohio Art Company. If you've ever picked up an Etch-a-Sketch, twisted those two white knobs, and tried to draw a staircase without lifting the line, you've used an Ohio Art product. For decades, Ohio Art and Etch-a-Sketch were practically the same thing. The company was based in Bryan, Ohio, a small town in the northwestern corner of the state, and they'd been making toys there since 1908. The Etch-a-Sketch was their crown jewel, one of the most recognizable toys ever produced. You'd shake it to erase your drawing, hear that soft, swooshing sound of aluminum powder redistributing inside the glass, and start all over again. If you remember that sound, you know exactly what this was. But here's the problem with building your entire identity around one product. When that product stops selling in huge numbers, you're in serious trouble. Ohio Art sold the Etch-a-Sketch brand to a Canadian company in 2016 and essentially stopped being a toy company altogether. The factory in Bryan shut down. The town lost one of its largest employers. Number 15. LJN Toys. In the early 1980s, LJN was riding high. They had the toy license for wrestling figures based on the World Wrestling Federation, and those big, rubbery action figures were everywhere. Every kid who watched Saturday morning wrestling wanted a Hulk Hogan or an Andre the Giant figure, and LJN was the only company making them. They also produced toys tied to Thundercats and a line of Dungeons & Dragons figures. But LJN had a side business that would become infamous: video games. LJN published some of the worst-reviewed games in the history of the Nintendo Entertainment System. Titles based on movies like Jaws, Friday the 13th, and Back to the Future were so poorly made that they became legendary for being terrible. The combination of declining toy sales and a genuinely toxic reputation in video games eventually sank the company. LJN was shuttered in the mid-1990s without ceremony. Number 14. Worlds of Wonder. In 1985, a company that almost nobody had heard of released a talking teddy bear called Teddy Ruxpin, and it became the single best-selling toy of the Christmas season. Teddy Ruxpin had a cassette player built into his back. You'd pop in a tape, press play, and the bear's mouth and eyes would move in sync with the recorded story. Kids were absolutely hypnotized by it. Parents lined up outside stores for hours trying to get one before they sold out. Worlds of Wonder didn't stop there. The following year, they released Laser Tag, a game that let you run around the backyard shooting infrared beams at your friends while wearing a sensor vest. Both products were massive hits. In the span of just 2 years, Worlds of Wonder went from a tiny startup to one of the hottest toy companies in the country, pulling in hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. But the rise was too fast, and the fall was even faster. Worlds of Wonder expanded aggressively, hiring hundreds of employees and opening new offices. When the stock market crashed in October of 1987, retailers pulled back their holiday orders hard. Suddenly, the company had warehouses full of inventory and nowhere near enough buyers. They hemorrhaged cash. By 1988, they had filed for bankruptcy. By 1990, they were gone entirely. The speed of it was staggering. A company valued at over $500 million on paper, reduced to nothing in less than 3 years. If you had a Teddy Ruxpin, you probably remember the exact moment you unwrapped it. You remember the weight of it, the click of the cassette door on the back, the slightly uncanny way its plastic eyes blinked while it told you a story about a place called Grundo. That bear was everywhere for exactly 2 Christmases, and then the company behind it simply ceased to exist. Number 13. Tyco Toys. For a generation of kids, Tyco meant one thing: remote-controlled cars. The Turbo Hopper, the Rebound, the Bandit. You'd charge that battery pack for what felt like 8 hours, plug it into the car, and get roughly 12 minutes of actual driving time before it died again. But those 12 minutes were pure chaos. Tyco also made slot car racing sets and electric train sets, competing directly with Lionel and the other scale model brands. They had a knack for making toys that felt faster, louder, and more aggressive than anything else on the shelf. In the mid-1990s, Tyco was still a major player with hundreds of millions in annual sales. Then Mattel acquired them in 1997, absorbed the product lines they wanted, and retired the Tyco name entirely. The logo that had been printed on the side of every box under every Christmas tree just stopped appearing on packaging. Mattel kept the products but killed the brand. Number 12. FAO Schwarz. Walking into the FAO Schwarz flagship store on Fifth Avenue in New York City was like stepping into a fever dream designed specifically for children. The toy soldiers guarding the entrance were taller than most adults. The floor piano, the one from the movie Big where Tom Hanks danced across the keys, was right there on the ground floor, and yes, you could actually step on it and play it yourself. Everything in that store was oversized, theatrical, and wildly expensive. A stuffed bear the size of a real bear. A toy car that cost more than some used automobiles. FAO Schwarz had been in business since 1862, making it one of the oldest toy retailers in American history. But keeping a massive luxury toy store running on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan got harder every decade. The company went through 2 separate bankruptcies, in 2003 and again in 2009. The Fifth Avenue flagship closed in 2015, and that image of the greatest toy store any American kid had ever dreamed of visiting was gone. Number 11. Parker Brothers. If you've ever played Monopoly, you've played a Parker Brothers game. They also made Clue, Risk, Trivial Pursuit, and Sorry. For more than a century, Parker Brothers was one of the most recognized names in American board gaming. Every family in the country had at least one of their games shoved in a hall closet, usually with the lid held on by a rubber band because the corner was crushed. You'd pull out Monopoly on a rainy Saturday, and somehow the game would still be going on Sunday morning. Parker Brothers was based in Salem, Massachusetts, and had been making games since 1883. But Hasbro acquired the company in the 1990s, and over the years, the Parker Brothers name quietly vanished from the boxes. The games still exist today, but they all just say Hasbro on the packaging. If you grew up with that Parker Brothers logo on the lid of every game you owned, you noticed when it disappeared. Most kids today have never heard the name. Number 10. Milton Bradley. Milton Bradley made the Game of Life, Battleship, Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, and Operation. The company had been around since 1860, making it one of the oldest game manufacturers in the country. You probably played Operation at least once. You'd grip those tiny metal tweezers, try to pull out the funny bone without touching the sides, and the second you slipped, the board buzzed and the patient's red nose lit up. Everyone jumped, every single time. Milton Bradley merged with Hasbro in 1984, and like Parker Brothers, the brand name gradually disappeared from the packaging. The games lived on, but the company behind them was gone. Two of the most famous names in American gaming, Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers, both swallowed by the same company within a few years of each other. Pick up a copy of Candyland at the store today and look at the box. The name that was printed on every game your family ever owned is nowhere to be found. Number 9. Tonka. Tonka trucks were indestructible, or at least that's what every kid believed. Those bright yellow dump trucks and bulldozers were made from pressed steel, heavy enough to leave a dent in the driveway if you threw one hard enough. And you absolutely threw them. Tonka trucks got buried in sandboxes, driven off porch steps, left out in the rain for weeks, and they kept going. The company was based in Minnetonka, Minnesota, which is where the name came from. They had been making steel trucks since 1947, and for 4 decades those yellow trucks were as much a part of American childhood as bicycles and baseball gloves. Hasbro bought Tonka in 1991. The brand name survived on packaging, but the company that built those steel trucks from the ground up in a factory in Minnesota ceased to exist as anything independent. The Tonka name still shows up on toys today, but they're plastic now, made overseas. They don't weigh 15 pounds anymore. They don't dent driveways. Number 8. Mego Corporation. In the 1970s, if you wanted an action figure of your favorite superhero, there was exactly one option, and it was Mego. They held the toy licenses for both Marvel and DC Comics, and their 8-inch action figures with real fabric costumes were the gold standard. Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, Captain Kirk from Star Trek. You'd bend their arms and legs into battle poses, swap their little cloth outfits, stage elaborate fights across the living room floor. The fabric costumes got ripped within a week. The rubber bands inside the joints snapped, the heads popped off mid-battle. You didn't care. You just popped the head back on and kept playing. Mego was sitting on top of the toy world in 1977 when a science fiction movie called Star Wars hit theaters. The company's leadership looked at the franchise and passed on the toy license, reportedly because they didn't think the movie would amount to much. That license went to a smaller company called Kenner, which turned it into the most successful toy line in American history. That single decision is widely considered one of the worst business miscalculations the toy industry has ever seen. Mego tried to recover. They pivoted to electronics and handheld games. Nothing gained traction. The company filed for bankruptcy in 1982 and closed its doors for good. The company that had once owned every superhero in the toy aisle was finished, largely because they said no to the one franchise that would have kept them alive for decades. If you grew up in the 1970s, you can probably still feel the weight of a Mego figure in your hand. The hard plastic head, the soft body underneath the little costume, the way the legs went limp when the internal rubber band finally gave out. Those figures were far from perfect, but they were yours. You knew every scratch on Batman's face and every tear in Spider-Man's suit because you put them there. Number 7. Louis Galoob Toys. Galoob gave the world micro machines, those tiny vehicles so small you could fit a dozen of them in your pocket and still have room for a quarter. The television commercials featured a fast-talking spokesman who rattled off product names at a speed that seemed physically impossible, and those ads became almost as famous as the toys themselves. You'd collect hundreds of micro machines, store them in those fold-out playsets shaped like gas stations in small cities, and inevitably lose half of them inside the couch cushions within a month. Galoob was based in South San Francisco and had been making toys since the 1950s. By the 1990s, micro machines were one of the best-selling toy lines in the country. But Hasbro acquired Galoob in 1998, and the micro machines line was slowly phased down. The company that made the smallest toys with the fastest commercials was quietly absorbed and erased. Number 6. Tiger Electronics. Tiger made the cheap handheld electronic games that every kid owned at least one of. Those flat plastic rectangles with the tiny LCD screen where you'd move a blocky character left and right, dodging obstacles that were really just dark smudges shifting across the display. They cost about $15 at the pharmacy, and they were the consolation prize when your parents wouldn't buy you a Game Boy. But Tiger's truly massive moment came in 1998 when they released the Furby, that strange owl-like creature with the blinking eyes and the babbling language that gradually shifted to recognizable English the longer you played with it. Furbies became one of the best-selling toys of the decade, showing up on every holiday wish list in the country. Tiger also made hit clips, those tiny music players that played roughly 60 seconds of a pop song on a cartridge the size of a postage stamp. Hasbro acquired Tiger Electronics in 1998, rode the Furby wave for a few years, and then quietly dissolved the brand entirely. Number 5. KB Toys. For millions of American families, KB Toys was the toy store you actually went to. Not the fancy one, not the giant warehouse. KB was the one tucked into the corner of your local shopping mall, right between the shoe store and the food court. The aisles were narrow, the shelves were packed floor to ceiling, and the prices were usually lower than the big chains. Walking into a KB Toys before Christmas was pure sensory overload. Every box was at eye level. Every display was built to make you point and beg. KB Toys operated for over 80 years and at its peak ran more than 1,000 stores across the country. But the rise of big box retailers and online shopping crushed them. KB filed for bankruptcy in 2004, briefly restructured, then filed again in 2008. By 2009, every single KB Toys location in America was closed. Hundreds of malls across the country had an empty storefront where the toy store used to be. Number 4. Ideal Toy Company. Ideal brought some of the most iconic toys of the 20th century to market. They claimed to be the first company to mass-produce the teddy bear, introducing it to American shelves in 1903. They made the Rubik's Cube a household name when they licensed it for the American market in 1980. They created Mousetrap, that absurd Rube Goldberg board game with the contraption you'd spend 30 minutes setting up for 10 seconds of action. The cage would come down, the ball would roll through the chute, the diver would flip off the board, and if everything worked perfectly, which it almost never did, the little plastic mouse got trapped under a net. Ideal had been a major force in the American toy industry for most of the century, but by the mid-1980s, the company was struggling to compete. Ideal was sold to CBS in 1982, then sold again to Viewmaster International, then acquired by Tyco, and eventually absorbed by Mattel. Each sale stripped away another layer of what the company had been. By the time the dust settled, the Ideal name was gone. Number 3. Coleco Industries. Coleco had one of the most spectacular rises and crashes in toy industry history. In 1982, they released the ColecoVision, a home video game console that was genuinely better than the Atari 2600 in almost every technical way. The graphics were sharper, the games looked closer to the actual arcade versions, and for a brief moment, Coleco looked like it might dominate the home gaming market. Then, in 1983, they launched the Cabbage Patch Kids, and the country lost its collective mind. Parents got into physical fights in store aisles trying to grab the last doll off the shelf. Cabbage Patch Kids became the most successful toy launch of the decade. Coleco was flying. But they made a catastrophic bet on a home computer called the Atom, which arrived late, arrived full of defects, and destroyed consumer confidence in the brand overnight. The video game market crashed. Cabbage Patch sales eventually slowed. Coleco, a company that had been generating enormous revenue just a few years earlier, filed for bankruptcy in 1988. The speed of that collapse still stuns people in the industry. Number 2. Kenner Products. In 1977, a toy company in Cincinnati got the licensing rights to a science fiction movie that nobody else in the business wanted. The movie was Star Wars, and Kenner turned it into the most successful toy line in American history. The demand was so overwhelming that Kenner literally could not manufacture the figures fast enough. So they did something no toy company had ever done before. They sold an empty box. An actual empty box called the Early Bird Certificate Package, with a certificate inside promising that the action figures would be mailed to you later. And parents bought thousands of them. Kenner went on to sell hundreds of millions of Star Wars figures over the next decade. They also made the Easy Bake Oven, which let kids bake real tiny cakes using nothing but a light bulb for heat. But Kenner's independence was short-lived. Tonka bought them in 1987, and then Hasbro bought Tonka in 1991, burying Kenner 2 layers deep inside a corporate structure. Hasbro officially retired the Kenner brand name in the year 2000. The company that gave an entire generation of kids their first lightsaber and their first set of Stormtrooper figures was simply erased from the packaging. Number 1. Toys R Us. For 3 decades, this was not just a toy store, it was the toy store. Every kid in America knew the jingle. Every kid begged their parents for a trip through those automatic doors. You'd walk in and find yourself standing in a warehouse of pure possibility. Aisles stretching farther than you could see, stacked ceiling high with every toy that had ever been manufactured. The bicycle section alone was bigger than most stores in the mall. At its peak, Toys R Us operated over 800 locations across the United States and was the largest toy retailer on the planet. It seemed like a permanent part of American life. Then a leveraged buyout in 2005 loaded the company with billions of dollars in debt. Every dollar they earned went straight to paying interest instead of improving stores or competing with the rise of online shopping. By 2017, they were done. Toys R Us filed for bankruptcy and closed every single one of its American stores in 2018. Over 30,000 people lost their jobs. The shelves were emptied, the Geoffrey the Giraffe mascot was taken down from the building facades, and the stores were boarded up. An entire generation of Americans watched the place where they grew up get gutted and turned into a mattress outlet. That is the list. 25 massive American toy companies that shaped your childhood and then vanished, most of them before you even realized they were gone. If any of these brought back a memory, drop it in the comments. Tell us which company made your favorite toy and which one you're most surprised to learn doesn't exist anymore. If you know someone who grew up with any of these, share this video with them. And please subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story like this one. Thanks for watching.